Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Moving on to item number 3, public comment. Do we have any? No one has signed up for public comment. Item 4, approval of the October 5th Infrastructure Committee meeting minutes. I have a motion by Supervisor Robinson. Second by Supervisor Gisselman. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. We're going to move without objection to the CPZ draft 6C. We're going to move that up. Discussion of Marathon County Assembly's ordinance 12.04.
I'll just tee it up here, but last month we did bring before you a draft of the 12.04 Assemblies Ordinance that we are circulating now for comment. And so we're just bringing it back to you again this month to collect comment. And then from here, we would take it back to the work group to try and finalize an updated ordinance that we would bring back before the 3 standing committees that are informing this update, and then to the county board for adoption. Right now, we also have it out circulating for comment with all the unincorporated areas in the county, asking them for feedback by November 15th. And we've also outreached to 2 events that we know take place routinely in the county that would meet this threshold. That is the STEAM show and the Taste and Glow. So we've asked them to comment as well. And so again, we're trying to close out initial comments on the draft by November 15th, so bringing it back before the committee for discussion.
Okay. Thank you for that. Is there any discussion that anyone needed to have on the draft? I know we had pretty good discussion at our last meeting about it, but if there's anything additional? Okay. Supervisor.
So what was the
Gisselman.
comment from the big event? Is that appropriate to ask that now?
We have
Because
not-
what was the reaction from the big event people?
We have not received their comments yet, so
So what, it's out there?
yes, it's
Right,
out there, yeah,
okay.
but we haven't received any comments at this
Okay,
time.
thank you.
Okay, anything else? No, I think we look good. So thank you.
Thanks, Jim.
All right, then moving on to item 5, policy issues, discussion and potential committee determination. Item A, state disaster damaged aid, County Road N.
Thank you. David, we have a couple pictures there. With permission from the committee, I'll maybe combine this one with 7B because they're both disaster aids. One's kind of an update, but one is another project we just had come up. County Trunk Highway N, just west of County Trunk Highway H, over by the Edgar area. On the 24th of this month, we had about 4.5, 5 inches of rain in the Edgar, Stratford area. We had some blockage, and we had a failure of the culvert, and what's included washing out the road. So as we did on the County Trunk Highway KK project, we are petitioning the state of Wisconsin for disaster damage aids. This petition is only for, well, I shouldn't say only, but it's for $35,000. The culvert's already been replaced. The road is open. We need to just get the road paved. But if the committee would endorse this petition, we could apply for funding for the $35,000. And as an update, again, this is a state disaster aid program where the state puts $1 million into the program annually for situations like this. If you remember back in the spring of the year, we applied for disaster damage aid for the County Trunk Highway KK project, which was part of our project already, but we did meet the criteria for that. So just this week we received $248,812.90 for the repair of the Highway KK project. So we did get some disaster aids, and so hopefully there's more funding available that we can get all or a portion of the $35,000 petition for County Junk Highway in this program also.
Okay, do we have any questions? Supervisor Straub.
Is that 35,000 the maximum that can be applied for?
That's our total cost of the project. We can't apply for more than it's costing us.
So if it had cost 100,000, you could have applied for the 100,000.
You get a percentage, and it depends, like on the Highway KK project, we did an improvement, so then you only get a percentage of the improvement. So it kind of depends on what you're doing. This one we replaced in kind.
But the minimum damage has to be, is there a minimum amount of damage before you can apply?
That is a good question. I believe there is a threshold. I like to say 5,000, but without looking at it, I'd have to look at
And the
it.
reason I'm asking that is because we had a similar situation in Cronenwetter a year and a half, 2 years ago, when there was a gully washer and they were floating canoes down 153 through this town, through the city of Mosinee. We had a washout, and it was projected the cost was $250,000, but the reality of it was only $5,000 worth of repairs that the crew had determined was needed. So they applied for the grant money. So I was wondering what was the minimum threshold to even poke the big guys for
Yeah,
grant?
I believe it's 5,000, and when the $1 million is gone, the $1 million is gone for the program too. One criteria for the program is, so if the water would wash over the road and like wash the shoulders out, that does not qualify. You cannot. The one criteria is you cannot drive through that area with a four-wheel vehicle. The road needs to be impassable.
Thank you for that explanation.
Supervisor Gisselman.
So is this Scotch Creek then? Was this the one, was this, that, I think that's in that neighborhood. I'm not sure what stream.
Scotch Creek is down the road a little bit. This is Fenwood Creek.
Okay. So what did you say, 4 inches of rain?
4.5. I
So
think we-
are other culverts in the county, because that's not very much, I think we have to start thinking about 6, 7, 8 inches of rain. Are other culverts in the county vulnerable for this kind of flooding and washing out?
No, we size them for more than that. We believe we had blockage in that pipe, that some stuff came down the stream and blocked that pipe, because we had another structure down the road on Highway M that there's a lot of trees laying around. So we believe we had blockage from the storm coming down the stream that
So
caused it.
that's what took that, okay, thank you.
Additional questions?
I think that 4.5 might not be real accurate, because across the road they got at 7. I know people there that at 7 inches in the rain gauge, so.
All right, any additional questions? Supervisor Robinson.
So you're looking for a motion to approve the submittal of the disaster damage aid?
Yes.
Or I would move.
So we have a motion for the state damage aid petition for County Road N. Do we have a second? We have a second by Supervisor Straub. Any additional discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. You wanted to comment then on County Road KK?
As I mentioned, yes, we have received $248,812. Was just we just got the letter. October 2nd. So that was almost half of that project that we had scheduled to put in anyhow. So again, we hit it early, and there were still funds available at that time. So we're very appreciative of the program, but it gives us an extra $248,812.
Any questions on that? No? All right. Thank you, Jim. Moving on to item 5B, then County Road XX center line and shoulder rumble strips.
All right, I'll take this one on. David, would you be able to pull up that map for Double X? This is the curve just east of Gander and Harley and north of where X and Double X intersect in the villages of Rothschild and Cronenwetter. We had a resident call in, and Jim's spoke with her a few times too. They've had 5 crashes on that curve since 2021, and 3 of them have been kind of the same mechanism of eastbound vehicle taking the curve to the right and failing to negotiate the curve and colliding with a vehicle that's kind of northbound curving to the west. And the measures that we have out there, we have put advanced warning signs out there, curve signs. We have added chevrons out there. Those are just the diamond arrows that follow along the curve on the outside of the curve. And another option for mitigation on this one would be to put center line and edge line rumble strips on there. That would make any drivers, it would give them an audible warning if they were coming across either one of those, if they're going outside the curve or if they were crossing center line on it. Speed has been an issue, so we have also put up, we have a radar feedback sign, so it goes right by the 35 mile an hour speed limit sign and then feeds back and flashes and blinks at you if you're going, I think it's over 40 out there. So what we're looking at on this, this intersection is not in our safety plan that was approved. That safety plan had specific intersections where recommended looking at these center line and edge line rumble strips. Since it wasn't in the plan, we figured we would bring it to committee to see if it's something that was wanting to be added. And the other thought I had was it'd be something, the downside with rumble strips is the audible noise to the neighborhood. There'd be something to ask the villages for their input and I guess their approval as the local community, if that's something that they would support before we just put it in with it not being in a plan that was already presented and approved.
Questions? Supervisor Robinson.
So the request is to amend the safety plan and then to follow the procedures that you had outlined relative to communicating with the local government?
I guess the request would be, one, to add it to the safety plan because that's a document that this body had approved. Then the other is whether you want us to go and get that local input and buy-in before we implement.
Well, given the fact that rumble strips tend to rumble through neighborhoods, and we've had lots of feedback in the past, I would strongly encourage you to communicate with the community and the neighbors. But I would move to amend the safety plan to include the County Road XX center line and shoulder rumble strips in a certain, do you have a designated area?
There's like a standard guidelines where they go from the end of the curve out, I think it's about 150 feet. So you find the beginning and the end of the curve point, then extend it out just beyond those.
In the area designated by the Highway Department.
And with the scheduling of this last crash was in October, and the scheduling for contractors, this is a specialty work. It just wouldn't be feasible to get done in this construction season anyway. So we could get with the municipalities over the winter.
We have a motion to approve.
Second.
We have a second by Supervisor
question
Gisselman.
then also,
Further
please.
questions?
So I think it's really important to be talking to the neighbors. You know, I think they're the ones, you know, it's fine to talk to the government, but I think the neighbors are going to, so if there's some way, and I know that's all time influence, but I think that really it's important to be actually talking to the neighbors over there and just knowing that they know what's coming, because otherwise, you know, it's not going to have a good feeling within the neighborhood if they're not aware of what's coming and sort of giving their, I don't want to say giving their approval, but at least acknowledging that this is coming in for safety's sake.
Yeah, we could do a mailing for the residents that are right there. And actually the request came from the landowner who owns, I think it's at least 2, possibly 3 houses that are on that curve. So she was the one she said she spoke with the neighbors, and from her input was that they were supportive of this and would rather have some measures to get the people to slow down and not have these crashes anymore.
Supervisor Straub.
So you mentioned that where the intersection or the curve by the Harley Davidson, to me, is that on the top right of that screenshot there, is that the intersection or the road curve, isn't that more to the east? Is that the last?
Yep, I was just given for a general to get everybody in the area that it's east of
That's
Harley and
the
Gander.
last hard curve, 90-degree curve before you hit X.
That is correct.
Okay. So and that's the boundary between Rothschild and the center line of double X's separates Rothschild and Cronenwetter. So who responds to these accidents more often, Rothschild or Cronenwetter?
That I don't know if I'm not sure what their EMS services are for.
So to recommend discussing it at the local level with the municipality, so you would approach both Rothschild and Cronenwetter boards?
Yes, basically put together quick synopsis of the crashes and the request and see if they were supportive.
Yeah, and on the double X issue, is it just at these curves that we're having accidents, or is it anywhere between those two curves, that Harley Davidson and this one? Especially like where double X and Terabani intersection is. There was a rollover there about a week ago. I don't know if you heard about that one.
No, that was not an area that we took a further look at.
Okay. I guess I'm for the rumble strips, but I don't think it really needs approval from the boards. But I think if it's just the rumble strip puts the safety in, I don't know. My opinion would be that they're going to be hit not that often, but if it solves the problem or helps mitigate the problem, I just would say go for it. But
Additional comments? Have we done this before, like on a curve, a center or rumble strip?
Highway P, we have some implemented from two seasons ago, and I have not had any feedback on those. Jim, that's
Is that like west of? Okay. Okay.
so much more rural and much less traffic.
Yeah, you wouldn't think there'd be much noise unless there was an issue, right? So it's not like you're coming up to a stop sign, you have those rumble strips that you hit 3 times. It's just whether someone's going to go a little too left or a little too right, and just, I guess the only question that pops up is we tend to run into the bicycle questions. I don't know if people bicycle this road, with the rumble strips on the side, the shoulder strips, I don't know. That's the only thing that pops in my mind, because we've had those discussions before.
Yeah, most of the biking in that area, I think most of the bikers go down either Terabani or Tower. I don't think they go around that corner very much.
Okay. Fair enough. All right, with no further questions or comments, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. 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 Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries. All right, thank you. Moving on then, item 6, operational functions required by statute, ordinance, resolution, or policy. Item A, 2429, bridge application and possible resolution. Commissioner Griesbach.
So I have just been recently working on our 2024-29 STP bridge applications as they were due a week ago. This committee had set forth a policy that we should strive to keep our bridges above 50. So if you remember, our sufficiency ratings go from 0, where the bridge is now laying in the river, to 100, where that's a brand new bridge. When they hit 70, they're eligible for a rehab, as long as you have a approved rehab report. Under 50, they're eligible for replacement under the federal guidelines. So the last application round finished, and we had all of our bridges under 50, both town and county submitted, and we were good to go. Every year we do bridge inspections, and this past year we had quite a few bridges fall back below that 50 mark. So I submitted 10 applications, 5 for the county side, 5 for the town side. There is a map in your packet similar to this The blue ones indicate the town bridges I submitted, and again, we oversee the town bridges, the greener town, blue is county. So we do oversee the town bridges, municipality bridges also. There's no cost to the county on that, it's just our oversight. So the 5 bridges I did submit on the county behalf are County Trunk Highway A over a branch of the Eau Plaine River, County Trunk Highway M, that is our one rehab bridge that is over 70, but it turns out to be the most expensive bridge. It's a very long bridge. County Trunk Highway N over Scotch Creek, which is just on County Trunk Highway N, as I said, just west of Highway H, which I will come back to. County Trunk Highway S over the Big Rib River. That bridge in particular falls in the category that it is on a particular classification of a highway that 100% of the construction cost falls under. We don't have no cost share. If approved, we'd have 100% funding for that construction and 20% share cost on the design. And their last one is on County Trunk Highway T, McGiven Creek, just north of the county line down toward Marshfield. So those are the 5 bridges I submitted with a total construction cost of $5,977,260. State funding on construction is $4,935,252, and the county cost is $1,042,008. Design costs on those come up to $961. State funding for that's $940,936. Our total cost there is $185,234. So our total county cost at this point, we'd be looking at for those 5 bridges of $1,227,242 projected. If you add in all the town bridges, again, we have no costs in those. Our total cost of all the projects were $11,606,400. So all those bridges, there's nothing special on them except the County Trunk Highway N Bridge, which I'd like to go in a little more detail with that one. That bridge was built in 1945. In 1968, it was a box beam, meaning there's just concrete boxes underneath that bridge supporting it. In 1968, they added some steel beams on the outside of that bridge to make it a little wider. Where those two meet up, the concrete is really starting to get bad. The sufficiency rating last October was 58. Again, that's a number from 1 to 100. So it didn't even qualify for replacement. It was in a rehab, but we were just sitting on it at that point. This October, the sufficiency rating fell down to 35.2. Again, where they meet, the concrete is getting very bad. The DOT wanted us to post that road at 20 ton. County Trunk Highway N is a major agriculture. It's a major trucking route. County Trunk Highway N is our designated truck route through the county. So we had some issues posting it at 20 tons, especially with the large Kingdom Haven farm right outside, and again being a designated truck route through Marathon County. We worked with the DOT and talked to them about putting barrels on the outside, right where that bad joint is. So currently, they're letting us put barrels on the outside of that road to force the traffic off of that joint to kind of keep them in a little bit. It doesn't intrude their lane. It is narrowing up the overall width of the bridge. Farm equipment is going to have a little tougher time to get off of that. They said we could do it temporary. They never specified what temporary was. So right now we have those barrels out there. We have some few issues. Again, A, we don't know what temporary means. And B, winter maintenance means we can't plow to the edge. So we're going to be out there. If we can keep those barrels up out there, we're going to take those barrels down to come out there and clean it by hand during the winter so that melting can get off, snow can get off of that. Again, I submitted that in part of the 2024-29 bridge program. Nothing moves fast in the state program. So the earliest available design date, which was available for that bridge, is 2025. with construction in 2026. They did have conversations with us. They wanted us to move that to 2027 just because they said you can't design it and get it built that fast. There are a couple options. One is if we could get it into the program, if it gets approved, we can ask to put it in the low-risk program, and there is a possibility we could get in the low-risk program. The last time we had a bridge in the low-risk program, it was designed one year and built the following year, so it can be done, but we have to try getting it in that program, and there's no guarantees. I wouldn't know if it falls in that program, probably. I won't know if this bridge is approved until January, and I wouldn't know if I could get it in the low-risk program probably till March, April. So that's one of our options. Our other option is just leave it as it is and build that bridge in either 2026 or 27 and hope that it doesn't get worse. Or our third option, which is part of the resolution in front of you today, is there's a process out there called a quick bridge process. And Dave, I don't know if you could bring up those documents you just loaded up for me the other day. Probably the top one gives you the best. They're on the bottom. I see them. Eau Claire County just put a bridge in like this. It's a possibility. I mean, we could do this, but it's going to take some funding for this. It's about a 3 to 4 week process. I'd have to work with an engineering firm. I'd have to bring one on staff right away to get it going. The design cost and something like that is about $35,000, speaking to the firm that did one for Eau Claire. The Inquick Bridge is could you go down maybe one right there? They make all the abutments, everything is done ahead of time in cast in steel. They deliver it up here, you put it into place. On the right on the picture, you can see they just bring it up on a Ford 150, I believe, out of Virginia. They bring up the abutments. We pull out the old bridge. We put in piling. You want to scroll down? I believe that one. That one shows on the left that they put in pilings. So we'd have to set our own pilings, have somebody set pilings, put a concrete footer down. You set the abutments. On the right, they show you that all comes in one piece. You put those together, you tie them, and you pour the concrete. That structure alone from Inquick is $240,400 is the price that they gave me now, their estimate. So that is a possibility if we went that route, that we could build that bridge next summer and have that road back open without having to go through the DOT process. If we went through the DOT process with design and construction, we're looking at approximately, as our estimate numbers came in, was $211,802. If we would go this route of the Inquick design and doing the rest, our costs in-house would be about $160,000, and that includes bringing somebody in a pound of piling, putting a railing on the concrete, guardrail, asphalt, labor, and equipment. Estimated cost is $435,400. So we'd be looking at an additional, like I had mentioned, $211,802 if we run it through the DOT process, have it built in 2026 or 2027, or we build it in-house ourselves next year for $435 would be an additional $223,598. So those are the choices in front of you. Again, if we went into the DOT process, we'd have to hope we get it into the low risk and hope that the bridge doesn't deteriorate. And in the engineering world, hope is not a great planning tool. I would ask that you maybe consider going the route that Eau Claire County did, and I would talk to the Eau Claire folks, maybe even having one over here for it. But we could have that road done next summer and have the road only closed probably less than a month. But those are your options.
Questions?
Well, I
Supervisor
think
Gissel.
that for safety's sake of people I would vote for in quick, just question with regard to the money, of course, but I think for the safety of the drivers in Marathon County, I think that we want to do that as quickly as possible. I think that's, finding that solution is the question, then would be the money. We have that in a slush fund somewhere?
Yeah, we don't have a slush fund, but I have talked to John about amending the 2023 CIP to include that in the 2023, and then, if approved, I would have to work with the Corp Counsel office because I probably can't go through the whole bidding process due to the time frame because it's kind of an emergency situation to move it along. Correct.
We have a process for going outside of the bidding process, do we not? It takes action of the county board, I would think, but that's okay.
3 weeks behind right now.
So there was a question, does the CIP, does that need to be amended then?
We have Corp Counsel right behind you.
You'd need to create the project, and if you wanted to do it in 2023, you would amend the existing 2023 capital improvement plan to create this project, fund the project, which would effectively also be a budget amendment within 2023 and require a 2/3 vote. Then if it was created in the 2023 CIP funded, and that project continued through into 2024, that's not a problem because the project was created and the funds for CIP essentially roll over. Is that fair, Mike?
Yeah, yes, that's what I was going to say.
Supervisor Straub?
So nobody likes to engineer on hope and prayer, I guess. You could add that on there too. But getting back to if you could put it in the low, what did you call it? The
Low risk.
low risk. I would prefer to see that effort put first because we're talking nearly $250,000 more for the same project, completed project. A bridge is a bridge, right?
Correct.
Whether it's in quick or...
As I mentioned, the downfall on that one is if I cannot get it into the low risk. If I do get it into low risk, it'll be done in 2026, and I won't know if it's in the low risk until probably March or April. By then, I can't get the bridge built next summer because it's too late. Because speaking to the consultant and the InQuick people, they're waiting for an answer to get it going so I can get it done next summer. They're pushing right now time frame for me to get it done. If I tell them here in the next few weeks, they're pushing to get it done in 2020.
And as a follow-up, just you're talking a year's difference in completion date, basically.
2 years.
Well, you could do it in 24 as opposed to 26. Two-year difference, but it's not on the risk of collapse or anything. You're limping it through, and it seems to be capable of being limped through. I guess I'm just looking at the money side of it because...
Yeah, I understand. Again, determining how fast concrete's going to deteriorate is pretty tough. Again, it went from a sufficiency rating of 50, what did I tell you? 58.0 to 35.2 in 1 year. If we see deterioration like that another year, we will be posting that road for sure, if not having to do more. This is on a 1 year cycle now, so we will be inspecting this bridge probably next spring already.
Supervisor Robinson?
So I thought we had one time I talked about the egg rip, or the...
There is the Ag S money out there. If we would go for Ag S, we can no longer, we post that section road because the rest of the highway is posted due to spring weight limits. If we would take the Ag S money, we can no longer post the rest of the roadway. So the bridge would be good, But the roadway itself, we could not post it for seasonal weight limits.
And is that an all-season road?
It is not.
And then what would it, obviously it would take more money to,
It would take, that is probably about a 6-mile segment. No, it's longer than that. It's probably 6 miles from H to 97, and it's a little over $1 million a mile. How many miles, Kevin? Just under 6. It'd be about $6 million to upgrade the road.
and do we, as a matter of course, look at what it would take to bring our roads to all season as part of the reconstruction project? Is that one of the evaluation criteria?
For the
Long-term. You know, again, we keep likening ourselves to Washington County, and Washington County has no all-season roads. They're all all-season roads. Now, they've got a lot less miles of roads than we do, and they've done a lot of jurisdictional transfers. But we keep struggling with postings and roads, and on a long-term basis, should we be identifying certain roads as being all-season roads and trying to look at them in the context of when we're doing the reconstruction, upgrading them?
Highway N would be a road that you definitely could look at. I think even the $1 million a mile out there might be on the short side because the soils in that Roselvo, Fenwood, loam are not good materials. We'd probably be looking at building that road up and probably purchasing right away. So I don't know if $1 million a mile would get that done, but it's something we could look long term.
So we're too late for this year's bridge and culvert aid.
This would not be, bridge and culvert aid would be for the local municipalities. The only thing that we have out there for our funding source is the STP bridge.
Okay.
So I have a question. Is ARPA funds not possible for this?
I'll take a
we
stab.
go-
We've got conflicting answers. How is that? We've got the Towns Association, which says these projects are eligible for ARPA, and concerns on the part of the counties that they're not. And because it may not, if you use ARPA, it may not factor into the 6-year general transportation aid, GTA. So we had that debate last year, and we put a bunch of projects in ARPA and then funded them instead out of reserves because of that concern. And we just can't get a clear and definitive answer from DOT and DOR.
So kind of go ahead, Jim.
One thing you may want to consider, and I understand the funding source, but as I mentioned earlier, we just took $248,812 less out of our CIP to replay the Highway K project. We just received that disaster aid, which would actually more than cover the difference in cost. We would be using highway reserve otherwise.
Supervisor Gisselman.
Well, let's test the water. I'll move that we approve the InQuick project. I'm not sure if, in addition to the motion, if we need is how the funding sources are going to be do we need that as part of the motion? Otherwise, I move the. So how do you want us to phrase that funding source as part of the motion?
It depends which one you would like to select, I think.
The resolution in your packet would probably serve as the basis for framing your motion. So if you look in your packet, it's on page 3 of 48. That's the resolution amending the 2023 capital improvement budget, essentially creating the capital improvement project that you're all talking about. And then it does identify funding, as Jim referenced, the funding source being highway reserves. So if you wanted to identify a different funding source, you'd simply note that in your motion that that funding source. I hope that's all right, Corp Counsel.
And if I
Perfect.
can interject, I did put that 500,000 in the resolution. I just got that new price yesterday to see the price is not quite 500,000. I just received it yesterday.
Okay, that's my motion.
Okay, so let's just clarify. So is your motion just for the resolution of the $500,000 transfer for the project? But we have a different dollar amount that should be on there instead of the 500? Is that what you had just said, Jim?
Yeah, as of yesterday, it was 435, 400, but again, those are estimated numbers.
So then my question would be, do you want to use the 500,000 or do you want to use an amount up to 500,000? Potentially you could make the resolution state that for an amount, not to exceed 500,000, potentially.
I'll second for the purpose of discussion, and then I have a question.
Go ahead,
So-
Supervisor Robinson.
So we have the reimbursement on the KK project, and where does that money go? Does that go into KIP? And then let me ask, is it critical we get it in the 2023 KIP, or can we put it in the 2024 KIP and then try to reconcile the funding source?
As of now, I believe Mary just put back in our highway reserve fund.
I'll take a crack at this. We'll have to look. What was the funding? The original funding was for that project, was that a CIP project?
Correct, it was.
Okay, and the funding source for the CIP was?
I love to say 550.
So generally speaking, if there is a balance for a highway project, the allocation, as I understand it, would continue in CIP to be used for CIP projects. But if that CIP project was funded with highway reserve, the funding, and there's a balance, it would stay within highway reserve. We'll have to look at that. With respect to your second question, if you're going to create it for a 2024 project, my sense is, and Mike, please weigh in, from a process perspective, that would go through the budget process. You're currently
In the budget.
yes, through the budget process. That is still, I mean, you're right on the edge of finalizing a budget, but you would do that through that process. The funding then would be allocated. I don't know that it changes the time frame very much, because you'll know what your budget and your CIP is going to be next week, Thursday. At least that's the plan, provided the county board adopts a budget. I don't know, Jim, if that changes your the timeline in an operative way.
Yeah, probably can make it work. We can, with the CIP project for the Highway K, I believe that was out of highway reserves.
So it seems to me then we have a 24 CIP plan. That was what Chris Holman had spoken to. So it would be added to that, is kind of what you're saying. Am I understanding that correctly?
Resolutions for 23.
The resolution is for 2023, so that would amend your existing 2023 CIP, which the county board would presumably debate and discuss and take action on the same date as the budget adoption anyway. Next week, Thursday, allocate the funding. So again, I think in terms of operations, it's not fundamentally different. I will say, the only thing that would make it different would be if you identified a funding source for the 2023 project within 2023's budget, like the 2023 contingency. But this is being funded out of highway reserves, which the annual allocation, in my estimation, at least right now, I don't see a difference. I see Mike has a microphone in his hand, so I don't know if he has a different approach.
I was just going to say the other difference would be if you're amending the 2023 budget for this project, it would be a 2/3 majority vote. If you're amending the 2024 budget, during the 2024 budget debate, that's a majority vote. So that's just a procedural difference.
So if the motion was to, and I apologize for thinking on the fly, but if the motion was to add the project as a 2024 project, that is something that this committee could forward to HR Finance. They could review as a budget amendment, and then the budget amendment and CIP amendment would be discussed and debated on next Thursday. Either way, it sounds like you're going to talk about it on next Thursday.
Supervisor Robinson.
I would propose a substitute amendment, and that amendment would be that we recommend work being to proceed on the county highway end project and refer this issue to Human Resources, Finance, and Property to determine the source of funding and the year of funding. And that would, for the purposes of allowing them to look at, do we pull it out of the 2023 KIP if it's advantageous, or put it in 2024, and then trying to reconcile that $248 reimbursement for $248,000 reimbursement from KK, but to let us look at what the funding source might be. But that would basically recommend the project proceed, and then leave it to finance to come up with the best approach.
Supervisor Soibert.
Thank you. Thank you. I have a question on the 2024 bridge versus the 2027 bridge. And is the 2024 bridge the one that's the first one in the state of Wisconsin? Where is it made? Does it handle salt? Does it handle 30 below weather?
Yes, there's multiple ones in Wisconsin. The closest one is in Eau Claire. We went and our bridge supervisor went and watched the installation of that. It's encapsulated in steel, but that's just basically your framework for it, where we normally put wood up and tear it off. This has steel. Yes, that's going to rust at some point, but you still have inside of that, you still have the same concrete structure as if you would have wood frames to pour your concrete in. So it actually has a little bit more protection.
So the 2027 bridge,
Would be your typical type of bridge.
typical type of bridge. And then what's the money savings going to 2027 instead of 2024?
The
I mean, we talked about $250,000.
Yeah, the 220 estimated cost, 223,598.
And how long will that road be closed during construction?
If we build it with the InQuick, I would estimate less than 1 month.
To get it done?
Yeah, because basically you're pulling the old bridge out, you're putting your pilings in, which you would normally do, and then instead of framing up your bridge and putting all of your false work on there, it's already done. You come, you set it, and you pour it.
And that road is posted in spring, right? Every spring?
That road is posted beginning at Highway H back to 97.
Okay.
Regular construction, if we did it the normal way, would be 3 to 4 months.
And now why isn't this, the 2024 bridge, eligible for any state funding?
It is eligible for state funding, but it wasn't eligible till this round. The applications are just due a week ago because the sufficiency number was over 50. So it is eligible for state funding, but to get your state funding, the STP process is just a 3 to 4 year process. The program is called 2024 to 2029, but there's no funding available until 2025 for design.
Okay,
So you have to run it through design and then go through the whole state-led process.
There's no disaster funding if it would completely fail, or there's no other funding if it would completely
If
fail?
it would completely fail, you may be able to get some type of disaster funding, but again, do you want it to fail when somebody's driving over the top of it?
No, but don't they inspect those? How often are they inspected?
We inspect that bridge every year.
Now that it's got a 30-some rating, do you inspect it more often?
We will inspect it. We're only required to do it once a year at this point, but we're going to keep an eye on it.
Okay. Thank you.
So we actually we have a discussion going on and a motion and a second. And then we had, what was offered up by Supervisor Robinson was kind of an amended resolution, correct? And so in that regard, what we would need would be the motioner and the seconder to rescind their motion so that we could move forward.
Mr. Robinson mentioned a substitute amendment, a substitute motion. What you would really want would be an amendment to the original motion speaking to the funding, referring back, because then the original motion would speak to the project coming out of this committee, and then going to the Finance Committee for funding. So I think that Mr. Robinson is what would be amending my original motion, speaking to the funding, whereas the original motion spoke to the project itself with regard to the endorsement from this committee onward to finance and up to the county board. Is that right? Am I right on that?
The only question I would have is, in the resolution, it talks about 2023 KIP. And so I just want to make sure that we're addressing both the year and the funding. And so however, I would look to Corp Counsel, I guess, however you think we should move forward with that, just to follow that process correctly.
Sure. I think it depends on whether you wish to follow the path of adopting the original resolution and recommending that to the board, or, as suggested by Supervisor Robinson, approving the idea of the bridge rebuild and sending it to HR Finance for the funding. Those are, I guess, two separate processes, but Supervisor Robinson had suggested that in an amendment to the original motion. I don't think we got a second yet to that, so I think that's where we are procedurally.
Okay, so we have an amendment without a second. Do we have a second for Supervisor Robinson's amendment? Please restate it.
The amendment was to approve the project, but to defer how it's paid for, whether it's 2023 or 2024, to finance to determine potentially incorporate into the 2014 KIP or the 2013 KIP, or 2024. I'm sorry, 2024. It's been a long week. Too many numbers.
I'm not going to second it yet, but the question is, I'd like to see us have funding before we decide if we're going to go ahead with this. I mean, if we say let's go ahead with it, but then we got to find funding, I'd like to see the funding first and then go ahead with it.
Well, here's what I'll do. I'll second Supervisor Robinson's motion so that we can just move forward with that discussion. Okay. So did you want to?
Yeah, I wouldn't start any process until somebody says there's money there.
Right, so why even vote on it at this level if you don't have the money?
We'll have to.
Supervisor Gisselman.
The county board, I think, will eventually have to weigh in on it anyway, so we'll see it finally there. But at least the Finance Committee will know that it has the support of this committee, and then it's up to them then to figure out how to pay for it between the two scenarios that Mr. Robinson outlined. So, but I think we will have the final vote on the county board level. So I think we'll see it again. We're just we're trusting Finance Committee to determine between 2023 and 2024 with regard to the CIP. Is that my understanding? Is that right?
That's my interpretation of where we are right now procedurally with the motion and then the amendment is if this was amended and then passed as amended, it would go to HR Finance with the understanding that HR Finance would make a recommendation to the full board about whether the funding source was 2023 KIP, 2024 KIP, or something else. And then ultimately the county board would vote on the resolution and decide that issue.
And if I may, I guess, just in saying it a different way, it's we're deciding, do we want it done? Do we recommend we want to go with, this case, the InQuick? Second thing is, well, then it's for next year. And then the other part is, how are we going to fund that? Will it be within the 2023 budget or the 2024 budget? So that's just the direction we're giving. We have our HR Finance chair here, so I think he understands that general direction, and then given the conversation with the commissioner as far as what the dollar amount is, if it's 435 or 453 or 500 or up to some amount. I think it's that general direction is what we're giving. Supervisor Straub.
Yeah, and so it's a matter of getting it done quickly, or waiting another year or two. So there were three scenarios that you presented, Jim. Could you summarize those again? The first one was to get I believe was the engineering firm that needed the time. That's what was going to cost the project to go to 2027.
No, so the three scenarios is the InQuick system that we would go the route and get it done next year. That's option one. Option 2 and 3 are kind of tied together. They're both submitted to the state STP bridge program for funding, okay? If it goes through the normal channels in the bridge program, you're looking at probably 2026, more likely 2027, if it goes through the normal process through the DOT. The third option is there is a program within the STP bridge program called low risk. Once your project is approved for the program, then I go to the state and say, I would like to see if I can put this into the low risk program. That I would not find out if it was eligible to get put into that low risk probably until late spring of 2024. If it was put into the low risk, it would not be built until 2026. So your options basically are 2024, possibly 2026. And I'll give it if you want a percentage, I'd give it a 50-50 chance. 26 or 27 running through the state STP bridge program.
Yeah, and that's where I'm tending to lean with the low risk eligibility for the funding that's where I stand on this.
Again, and the low risk that's not up to me. I can submit for the low risk, but all I'm doing is submitting with 72 other highway commissioners to put them into the low risk. So it's not like I'm put in the low risk and say, check this box. I have to get it approved.
Supervisor Sorbert.
Thank you. If you go with the low risk and you're approved for the low risk, does this quick bridge work under that low risk?
It would, but you'd be spending an extra $200 and some $1,000. You could do it cheaper. If you put it in the low risk, you're still building it the same way as the old process. You'd just save, what you would save would be 2 months of construction during the summer.
So the quick bridge is that much more than the standard bridge, correct?
Correct. You're paying to get a bridge put in and a road back open to normal traffic in 2024 compared to waiting to 26 or 27.
Okay, so total extra cost from one bridge to the next?
223, 598.
So the cost of a bridge is 223, the original bridge?
If I would go with the bridge, the normal process, not quick bridge, you're looking at a cost of the bridge itself would cost $881,000 construction. The state would be picking up $704. Our cost would be $176, $244 for the construction, and another $35,000 for engineering. So if it runs through this, you can always build things cheaper if you don't run them through the state process. The state processes cost extra dollars to run it through the lead process. So is your question, is the overall bridge going to cost more, or is it going to cost Marathon County more? Because that's two different answers.
Well, we have A and B. How much is Marathon County going to pay for the Quick Bridge? How much is Marathon County going to pay for B?
Marathon County in total would pay again, estimated cost. Quick Bridge, $435,400. If we run it through the normal process, it'll cost Marathon County, not the overall cost, but what it costs Marathon County, $211,802, and that difference is $223,598.
Okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
I think it's just what do we want to pay? If we want it done sooner through this company, then we have to pay more for it. It doesn't mean the overall cost is more. The overall cost is going to be less using the bridge. It's just that we would not be getting the aid to help support it if we did it in '24. If we wait, then we would.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Supervisor.
Was there any economic impact study done? What that'll cost to shut that road down for 3 years?
No, there was not, but I just got this information beginning of October. So
Is that a hard process to do?
Mr. Chair.
Impact?
I've never done an economic impact, so I could not answer that question for you. But I know it would cause hardship to. Besides Kingdom Haven Farms, there would be quite an impact.
The detour would be highway. The detour would be Highway B or Highway P?
The detour would be Highway P.
Is P a truck route also?
No, it is not.
Supervisor Hardinger, go ahead.
Just for clarification, the degradation rate when that was inspected earlier was at 58%. You said now it's at 38%?
It's a sufficiency number. Yes, in October 2022, it was 58. This October is 35.2.
So we're basically looking at an imminent failure of that bridge. Is that correct?
Pardon?
So with that degradation rate, between 1 year going down roughly 20% or 20 points, I mean, how long can we afford to wait to rebuild it or to replace it?
Again, concrete deteriorates at different rates, but I'm afraid this one, once you start getting the separation in there where material can get in there, again, we do have the barrels on the side of the road, which should slow it down. To what degree, I'm unable to answer that.
Well, I mean, typically when you see concrete start to fail like that, especially in the spring, once all of the road sediment, salt, and everything else gets in there and the ice and starts spreading it, I would think we're looking at a much worse rate once re-inspected in the spring.
I agree.
So just for clarification, Mr. Chair, can we restate the motion with the amendment, please?
So what's before us is approving the project using InQuick Bridge for the summer of 2024 with the funding source to be determined by HR Finance, whether it be 2023 or 2024. And the amount
And
we are,
I don't know if
and the amount that we're discussing is this up to $500,000.
And I mean, can we make this, I guess, this motion with our recommendation that we need to move on this?
I think the motion itself, the passing this, addresses that.
Okay, I apologize. Thank you.
All right. Supervisor Soibert.
Originally, I was not in favor of this, and I'm kind of swinging the other way. The cost of a life what's $250,000? I mean, if that bridge fails and it's deteriorating as fast as what things show, one major accident, one major failure, we could lose lives. Thank you.
Supervisor Straub?
Yes, after listening to the discussion, I'm beginning to believe that if it's dropped that fast from the efficiency rating, or whatever it's called, we probably should find the source, identify the source for funding, and move along and get it done next year. Thank you.
All right. Well, given those comments, with a motion and a second and good discussion, I would say all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion. That was on the amendment, correct? The amendment passes. All right, which means that this item is completed. Let's go find some money. What do we need to do?
You would now, because the original motion has been amended, you would need to vote on the original motion, which, as amended.
I apologize. So, all those in favor of the original motion as amended signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, motion carries. Thank you for the clarification. All right, good discussion. Thank you, Jim and Kevin, for that. Okay, moving on to item 6B, discussion of HR Finance Property Committee's 2024 proposed budget and possible recommendations regarding modifications. Is there any additional discussion that we wish to bring up? Supervisor Robinson, if you want to lead off.
Just like to, well, obviously, this issue will need to be factored into those discussions, so we'll take it as both a 2013 and 2023 and 2024 KIP project. But I just want to also just highlight again that the KIP was modified relative to rolling stock to give us a first increase in 13 years, which will address some of the inflationary pressures that have been on Jim and his crew relative to the replacement of vehicles. So I think that's a positive item in the budget.
Any additional questions or comments? Supervisor Gisselman.
Yes, thank you. I just want to follow up with regard to a discussion last month with regard to funding for the development of some kind of plan for the new facility. So there, my understanding right is that there is no money for the development of, well, I really just want to have the discussion because I think that if there's going to be money available, I mean, how do we proceed through 2024? Since there's, I understand, no money in the budget, so is it fine to go into 2024 still pursuing the opportunity for acquiring land for the new facility? Because I think a lot of other things are dependent on that. One being the Marathon County plan. So, I mean, if things just keep being dragged out, you know, what's the plan for that piece of land? But the first step is for the new facility. So I was concerned that there was no money, and my question is basically, how do we proceed into 2024 with regard to developing a plan for acquiring land for the new facility? Thank you.
Commissioner?
I'll kick things off and turn them over to Lance very shortly. This kind of give you an update where we are. We did talk about a couple of other sites. There was a proposed site brought up that I did some more investigation in, and it turned out to be classified as a landfill at this point, so that one kind of came off the books. But we are having the consultant do a quick look at a possible site that we have found, to evaluate that site, and also to look at, again, you know, what would happen if we would stay at original site, even though we do have a approved West Side master plan saying that we should leave. I know Jamie's also looking at the emergency shelter area in the same site, so it'll be considered, and hopefully I could have a report for this committee and probably full board in January.
The short answer to your question on the budget, Jim had money in his budget for property acquisition, and as part of my budget building, I took that out. I mean, there's no funding in the 2024 budget as it's currently published that would provide for a direct funding source that is allocated for property acquisition or construction for a new highway facility. I think, as Jim said, we've met a couple of times since your last meeting and talked about really getting in front, like we have with this committee, on a couple of occasions to talk about specifics, and some of that has been done in closed session. Having that meeting with the full board, laying out the options, because kind of the underlying concept within your question that, we need to know what direction you as the policy making body, the board, want us to go. I mean, staff are going to be able to, as Jim said, if the direction is, hey, we're staying on, you have all the information you need as a board, we want you to stay at West Street, we can do that. We can tell you what the modifications are that we need to make, and that's what we're working with our consultant to try to get some, because that was a question that was been had. What does it really take, and what are the drawbacks to really get those advantages, disadvantages of current site with some costs, and then compare that to what some of the discussions we previously had with what does property acquisition look like, and proposed funding source. I mean, we talk a lot about highway reserve, but really coming up with, this is how much is in highway reserve, this is how much you could conceivably use for construction, and then if you did go with kind of the capital stack, how much is highway reserve, what is going to be, if you did borrow, what would that look like, how could you structure that? So I think those are all things we'll work to have done post-budget, and my sense is that's a presentation for the full board.
Additional questions? Comments?
Yes.
Supervisor Hardinger, go ahead.
Yes, sir. Actually, this was the question for the administrator. I'm sure you don't have this number in front of you, but I'm curious how much we have in property as Marathon County. We would, we're talking about budget, we're talking about numbers, we're talking about things that need to happen. What do we have in assets as far as property in Marathon County? Is there anything that we've looked at as far as selling to help with our budget issues?
Very good question. In fact, the short answer to your question, do I have any idea as to the total overall value of the property that Marathon County owns within the county? No, I don't. But, looking at, are there opportunities to divest properties to provide some revenue for purposes of future projects or service of existing debt? Certainly that's something that is being discussed. There are actually a couple of budget amendments that are being proposed that I saw were in the packet for HR Finance and Property that talk about the utilization of proceeds from any divestment to go toward debt service or debt mitigation. And the other thing I'll tell you is I serve, by virtue of the Tri-County Agreement that creates North Central Healthcare that was adopted by the board a number of years ago, I serve on the executive committee of that board. And we just approved, there are some properties that North Central had been occupying that they no longer have a use for, but they were owned, they have historically been owned by North Central, even though pursuant to the Tri-County Agreement, the most recent one, they're not allowed to purchase property. So we approved the transfer of those properties to Marathon County with the specific intent. Again, I think that underlies your question. That is, any proceeds from the divestment of those would go toward our existing, the existing debt obligations that North Central has. So I think certainly there's the opportunity to.
Mr. Administrator.
Oh, sorry.
No, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, that's all I had. I mean, I think that continuing to look at those opportunities is certainly something that we can do. Right now, I know the Corp Council and Treasurer's Office and County Clerk are really trying, at the direction of the HR Finance and Property Committee, really trying to get any tax delinquent properties back on the tax rolls. So that has taken kind of the lion's share of staff time to evaluate those opportunities. I think to your broader point, once we make some headway on those tax delinquent properties, evaluating whether or not there are remnant parcels that we can, as a county, also look to transfer to get back on the tax rolls is certainly a little bit of low-hanging fruit, just slightly higher than the lowest hanging fruit, which is the tax delinquent property.
Thank you, Mr. Administrator. Do we have a rough idea of how much money is kind of sitting out there with the tax delinquent? I guess that would be the first part of my question. Second part of my question would be, do we have any idea what the value is of the land that's going to be transferred over from North Central if we were to market it?
I'll start with your first question about, do we have any idea as to what the total value of tax delinquent property is? I don't have a specific dollar amount, but in preparation for this year's budget, I did look historically at Marathon County's tax collection rates, and this is my recollection, so don't hold me to it, but I think I'll be certainly close. Our tax collection rate has hovered between 97 and 99.5% of the overall taxable value, looking back to years, between 2010 and 2015. I don't believe we're substantially different from that at this point, but I don't have current year data on that. With respect to your second question on the value of property, the two parcels that I referenced that are still currently owned by North Central, and we're working toward getting that transfer completed. One is a vacant lot in the city of Wausau. I believe it's on the corner of 6th and McClellan. It used to have a structure on it. That structure was demolished. So that is a vacant parcel, I believe, probably in the neighborhood of between $50,000 and $60,000, I think is what it's listed for right now. I'm not sure what really, of course, any value we're going to get is just what someone is willing to pay for that parcel, but it has been listed for some time, as I understand it. The second is a piece of property that historically had held the community corner clubhouse, if you're familiar with that. It was used for adult day services. Recently, the adult day services program, North Central approved essentially a series of agreements that they're ensuring that the program continues, but is managed and operated by a nonprofit in the community, and that nonprofit is going to deliver that service on their existing site. So that location on 3rd Avenue is open, and I'm not aware of what the fair market value or assessed value of that location is. But that has not been listed for sale, or the county has not, because technically the county doesn't own it as of yet. We hope to accomplish that in the near future, and then we'll have a report to the board on that. But we can look into the assessed value for that.
Supervisor Robinson?
If I could just try to interject. We're trying to get a handle on how many properties there are, and I think what Lance had identified, there's over 1,000 parcels over the county, and that gets into 40s for our parks and forest and remnant parcels associated with right-of-way and others. We're trying, the HR Finance Committee has been working on the issue of properties, and we focused initially on those that were tax delinquent in both the process of acquiring those, because if we don't acquire them within 10 years, we write off and can't recover the 11th year. And the board recently adopted a change in the process to NREM from tax foreclosure, tax deed, which will accelerate that. And the good news is, as a result of some of those changes, the Treasurer's Office has been getting more and more people who come and pay their back taxes, so we don't have to take the property But the taking, once we take them, the value is somewhat limited by recent Supreme Court rulings relative to Hennepin County, where we can only recover our cost. In the past, we were able to sell it, and if we made a profit, we could keep it, and many times we took a loss. So we're sorting that out, but we're looking at working with the Wisconsin Surplus Property Program in marketing those remnant or those tax deed processes and trying to accelerate the sale and transfer it. So the treasurer's office is involved until we take it, and then the clerk's office is responsible for the disposition of it. We're working with the Corporation Council. But we are trying to set up our policy on what to do with our major buildings or major parcels, which would include the Social Services Building on Thomas Street, potentially River Drive. There's a parcel on the other side of the research station that's vacant, and what would we do with some of the other properties as we move our operations away from them. That's what we're working on, and the policies and procedures that would drive the disposition of those properties. So we're aware of it. We're working on it incrementally, and I don't know that we know what the value of those parcels are right now, Supervisor.
Supervisor Sorbert?
I just have a question for Jim. Jim, how many outreach highway departments are there?
We have 5 shops during the winter. Matter of fact, this past Monday, we just moved people to the Hatley shop, Mosinee shop, and Abbotsford shop. The rest of the year, like from whenever it quits snowing, hopefully in March, April, May, till now, we closed down those shops. We just have the Stratford shop and the Wausau shop.
Wausau shop, okay. Now, is there any possibility as in increasing their size, like the Stratford shop, if you're short of truck room in town, if you're short of truck, is there any possibility of increasing those sites? I know there's extra acreage there, increasing their sites to handle 2 more trucks, or
the truck that they start getting too far from their routes at that point. Basically, our Stratford shop handles everything west of 107, so they're going quite a ways already. So if you start moving more trucks out, you're looking at, darn near driving to Wausau every day with a truck getting 3 miles a gallon to start their plow route. So it gets quite a ways, and your level of service is going to start to drop.
do these shops have their own budget, or it's just a open budget with the county highway department? I mean, does Stratford have its own budget? Does Mosinee?
No, we just have one. We just have one budget.
Okay, thanks.
Supervisor Grisselman?
Thank you. Well, I just raised the issue because if the county board decides to do this in next year, that's fine. But, how do we, and it's an open, and I'm not asking for an answer, but it's just that my concern is that while we are proceeding along the path of trying to find, deservedly so, a new facility, I don't know that we're set as a county to move in 2024 with regard to how, so we may be, we'll see what happens after the discussions that Administrator Leonard mentioned, but it's just my concern that I think I would like to have sort of a plan. That's why I raised the issue. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, and you have the land purchase, but as far as design, the design frame on the building, like we are looking at, is probably 12 to 16 months or something like that, just for design. But you have to have the land before you design.
Any further questions? All right. There's no action that's required of us on this. It was just a discussion on the budget. So, moving on to item 6D, resolution supporting applications to PSC for broadband expansion. Supervisor Robinson.
Thank you, and I apologize for the lateness of the information in your packet, but we had some technical issues on Monday with the broadband task force meeting, and that meeting was postponed until yesterday. And we are responding to requests from internet service providers relative to the current broadband solicitation from the Public Service Commission through the Capital Projects Fund. The applications are due next Tuesday, the 7th. If you could scroll down to the map, the Broadband Task Force targeted, if you can go to that one right there. This is a map of the Rural Digital Opportunity Fund, which was operated through the FCC, and the orange areas were areas that there was a reverse auction. The FCC said these are areas that are unserved, underserved. We're going to auction out. There was $20 billion available nationwide. There was $9.9 million of awards made. The orange area represents the area that was to be awarded to a firm called LTD Broadband out of Minnesota. They received $1.3 billion of awards across the country. FCC, upon review, said that they lack the financial capability to get the work done. Therefore, we will rescind our preliminary approval of it. That left those areas exposed and not eligible for a number of rounds of grants through the Public Service Commission, through ARPA, and other things. So the committee has targeted those as a priority. And again, those orange areas, if you would then scroll down. The green was an area that's covered by Charter Communication. The white and the yellow are projects that have been completed or will be completed this year. The blue represents work that will be done over the next 2 to 3 years by Charter across the county. And there's a funding source. They'll be providing gigabyte service fiber to the premise. Keep scrolling. So we're down, and we've got Bug Tussle. Just keep scrolling. If you could go down to, keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going. It'll be the right there. So we have received proposals from Charter asking us to partner, and these are. One of the reasons it's so late is we were originally supposed to have the Broadband Task Force meeting a week ago, but we're still working on defining the projects. We received the latest update at 6 p.m. last night, and I'm sure that between now and next Tuesday there will be other changes. This is an area being proposed to be served by Charter, and it represents the northern part is Reed Rock, Rib Falls, the Ween, and a small portion of Castle. And that project represents about 2,088 or 89 locations at a project cost of $7 million. Charter is throwing in $7.6 million, and they're looking for PSC and other subsidies at a little over $7 million on that. The second project in the southwest corner is McMillan, Day, Spencer, and it may get into a little bit of Green Valley. And they're proposing to serve that. Originally it was 2,600 locations. They've revised that down to just over 2,000 because Frontier had been awarded a grant last year from the Public Service Commission that they missed, and they've gone back and updated their numbers and their figures to reflect the homes that are going to be served by Frontier. This project cost was originally in excess of $11 million, looking for a subsidy of $5.7 million between the state and the county. Scroll down a little bit. Frontier has thrown out 3 different projects, one in the Village of Maine. All of those shaded areas reflect the old ARPA or the RDOF area. So they've got 3 sections, the northern, middle, and then some overlap within the town of Spencer. They're proposing to serve a little over 800 customers in that area. We don't have the final numbers on that yet. The Broadband Task Force looked at the projects, and we are recommending the county support all 3, understanding that there's overlap in Spencer, but the Public Service Commission will arbitrate that, and they'll look at it We also discussed what level of support. We know that if there are partners in the communities, that the strength of the application increases. And based upon a review of what we've spent today, we've spent a little over $108 a crossing or passing from 2020 through now. In some cases, we had no subsidies. In other cases, we were subsidizing at a rate of $235 a passing. We've had some as high as $870 for smaller projects done by Serenity. But the Broadband Task Force recommended funding it at a passing rate of $100 per passing in order to subsidize and enhance the chance. There's only $42 million available. We don't think that all of these projects will be funded. We're hoping that one will be. There will be a total of 5 projects submitted to the Public Service Commission, and based on the information yesterday, Mike prepared a resolution both supporting the projects and committing that $100 per crossing, and that resolution's in your packet, and the maximum fiscal note would be $495,100, and we're recommending that comes out of the ARPA funds. At one time, we had committed $3 million of ARPA funds for broadband. We walked that back based upon our commitments. We had committed $944,000 some odd dollars to Frontier for that area covered last year, and approximately $145,000 to Bug Tussle for the Cronin-Water Knowlton Gunther project. And we're requesting that some of the ARPA funds be used to fund this. Again, I don't think that all of them will be funded, but if we don't submit, none of them will be. So we're looking to partner with those 2 companies on their cumulative 5 projects.
I have one question. So slide 11 and slide 12, if we could bring those up. The slide 11 is the orange and green. That one there. So I'm looking at that green area surrounding Stratford and then going west and north, and then comparing that to the next one down, if you go to the next slide, where it's the white and the yellow in that same area.
And blue.
And that small section of blue. Was the green, was that the Frontier area?
No, that is, I'm sorry, the green is a
previous.
charter area. If I said Frontier, I misspoke.
Okay.
So charter is moving ahead, and we've been pleasantly surprised and happy. They've completed 2,200 passings to date, and I think there'll be, by the end of the year, potentially about 4,000 passings lit up. So the orange, again, would have been LTD. That fell out of the program. The green is a charter, and they are moving ahead with their gigabyte service.
Okay. Thank
And
you.
again, the yellow and white are projects that are done or will be done this year. Blue is in the planning.
Thank you. Additional questions or comments? Okay. So given that, you also mentioned letters of support that you've reached out to certain organizations or businesses or such. Can you just briefly comment on that?
Sarah Severson has been doing a wonderful job. We've assumed we're going to be participating, so we've sent out letters to school districts, healthcare institutions, local business organizations, local governments, asking for letters of support. I believe we have 10 per project or per entity, charter and Frontier coming in. Those letters went out Tuesday morning, so we've given them until noon tomorrow, because I think Frontier intends to submit their application tomorrow afternoon to avoid any glitches in technology. So we will, and they need our resolution. So this resolution, the concept came out of Broadband Task Force yesterday. The resolution was developed last night by Michael. It will go from here to finance, HR, finance and property, to the full board tonight for action.
All right, thank you. Supervisor Straub?
Does any of this broadband expansion throughout the county, does that have an effect on cable television also?
Well, it has the available, the issue. Generally, yes and no. It really gets into what your options are, but by running fiber to the home, you create additional options. In some cases, Spectrum is serving it. Frontier may be providing things which will allow people to access it through their internet service. So that's how they will be able to access this. In the RDOF area, that area served by Charter, they have to offer up to a gigabyte service. They're typically offering, they can scale it and charge different rates.
And as a follow-up with the activity with the broadband expansion and the fact that cable television is connected to it, those people that are electing to not run their television through cable network service and they're receiving their television signal from the air waves, just drawing it off the antenna, has there been any effect with this expansion on those folks that are receiving television signal from off the air?
Let me take a step back. What we're doing is providing internet service, and internet service has all sorts of uses. Voice over internet, accessing various arrays of offerings for Hulu, Roku, other things, Amazon Fire. We don't get into the issue of how this impacts. In my house, we don't have cable service for TV because we're getting over the internet. I can't answer that question.
Okay.
We're looking at it only from the perspective of internet is critically important for people's ability to link for healthcare, for education, for business, and for even communication with your family. We really haven't studied what the impact is on cable, the cable industry.
Well, just to follow up, we personally just draw our television signal off the air, and we noticed that there's quite a. At one point, I thought there was something was discussed at one of our meetings where the antennas were in direct line. They were doing some realigning of signals or something like that, and we believe that maybe something happening up on the head end, up at the tower on the hill, was affecting the broadcast signal for people trying to pick it up through the air waves. And so my question is there any effect to the folks that, I know this is not the internet, but since the internet can be sold with television service by these providers such as Charter and others, so is that having an effect on the television signal that's being broadcast over the air for simple antenna pickup,
Jerry?
Not to my knowledge. I'm not aware that any of these projects are going to affect like Channel 7, Channel 9's digital radio distribution of their signal. But I can tell you that the Charter proposal that's, Reed Brock, Wien, what's the other one? Reed Brock, Wien, Rib Falls.
Yes.
And then the McMillan, what they're proposing is to run fiber to the home in those five project areas. And if they do that, these are areas that they do not currently offer cable television. So these are outside the Edgar footprint. So Charter today has a cable feed in and around the metro Edgar area, but all of this stuff on this proposal is fiber to the home, which they would then offer. You can get just internet over it, or you could get a package of internet and cable TV like TDS offers. Does that make sense?
Supervisor Strong?
Yeah, I guess my question just was, is any of the activity of cable, fiber optics or cable, whatever, that's being expanded, is it having any adverse effect on folks being able to receive a signal off the air?
It should.
I'm not aware of anything.
It should not.
Those are really different frequencies.
They've narrowed the frequencies of the stations. They used to have a much broader frequency. They've narrowed those, which they've gone to digital signals, and that may impact it. Sometimes the way that the transmitters are positioned on towers can impact service, and I notice that particularly when up north, we've got a place in St. Germain And there's significant seasonal differences in our ability to receive signals. The towers that are going up by Bug Tussle are for wireless, but they're also for cell phones and cellular service, and 52% of your data comes off of those cell towers. And so it's important, but I'm not aware of any interference between those. It probably has something to do with the narrowing of the bands and the direction of the transmitters.
And I'll just
if
mention.
I can take you back in history a bit, before they switched over to digital on, like Channel 7, Channel 9, Channel 12, they had an analog channel, analog frequencies, an analog signal over the frequencies they had. The FCC, this goes back like 15 years ago. The FCC said you have to move to these other frequencies, do a digital transmission. It's a much narrower band, and by a certain year, and I don't remember, it was probably 6 or 7 years ago, they said you can no longer have it, and then the FCC sold all of that frequency band, all of the bandwidth that back in the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s, like Channel 7, Channel 9, public television. All of those guys, all of those frequencies, all got sold, and they used that money and put it back into selling to broadband. So those frequencies ended up getting used for cell service and point-to-point Wi-Fi solutions.
Yeah, I'll just add from my own experience, we have digital antennas, and they work just fine in the village of Stratford. So we got rid of cable, and so that works just fine. And we do have Charter Spectrum for internet, and you've got the big cable coming in, so in any time, like you had mentioned, any time we wanted to get TV, we could do that. So I would assume it would be the same thing. So I did have one question, the broadband support position, do we have any update on that before we move forward with this resolution? Yeah.
Yeah, so we had posted that position. I think we mentioned this at the last infrastructure meeting. We only had 2 applicants for it. One of them was unresponsive, and we asked him for an interview, and the other one we did interview and decided it wasn't a good fit for us, so we reposted that position about 2 weeks ago, 2.5 weeks ago, I think. It closed, I think, yesterday. It closed on Monday. And Sue Fox is my contact in HR, and she's been actually out of the office for a few days. So I don't know who all applied for it. I don't have any way to log in because she posted it. I can't look at her feed, but I left her a message on Tuesday morning. And Lance, do you know, is she back? I know she was out of the office for a few days. So I don't know the answer to that. I'm hoping that we had some applicants for it.
Okay. Fair enough. All right, then with our resolution supporting the applications for PSC, we'd be looking for a motion and a second on that. Motion by Supervisor Robinson, second by Supervisor Seubert. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, then moving on. Thank you for that, by the way, Supervisor Robinson. Moving on, 7A, educational presentations and committee discussion, coordination with NTC civil engineering curriculum. Kevin.
I'll take that one. I met with NTC faculty for their civil engineering curriculum. They started a program, I think it was about 4 years ago now, it's a 2-year program for civil engineering. So this is going to be surveyors, drafters, technicians, GIS type technicians, and just looking to do a little coordination with them. It's kind of a back and forth. They were looking to get some input guest speakers, so I said I could come in a time or two during the year and basically talk about what we do as far as the civil engineering side. And then the takeaway on their side is they have senior capstone projects. Typically, they've been going around campus, and basically they'll go out, survey a culvert or a crossing on a trail, and draw a project up so it looks like an engineering project. And just talking that we have opportunities where they could take a look at some of like our bridge aid projects, where I'll draw up just typical sections and some schematics and plans for them. They could take some of those projects and actually do some real life projects with it. It wouldn't be something that it would be advisory. We may or may not use it. It would just give them an opportunity to take at something that's actually out there in the civil field. And kind of brought that up to this committee because I also knew that administrator and corporate counsel would be here to see if there's any red flags with that type of coordination. One of the caveats is we would not use any projects that we typically hire out consulting firms for, any of the state projects, any of the formal things. This would be more of just our in-house stuff that I usually do the design, or sometimes it's as informal as meeting out with our construction crew and discussing what needs to be done, and they take care of it, where we don't do much of any plans. But it'd be a nice project for somebody at that level to take a look at and draw up a cross-section and make a little bit of a plan sheet with it.
Very good.
No, we also, I guess, a little other side benefit we'd hope to do is some exposure for summer employees too, and possibly future full-time employees with the county. Kind of just promote what we do with the county. It's amazing sometimes people just think that we plow snow and patch potholes, so it'll be a good way to get our message out there to a few more people in the community.
Very good. Questions, comments? No? Well, sounds like a good thing. Thank you. All right, moving on to 7C, then CCIT projects. Jerry.
There's a report in your packet. I'll just give you a couple of quick highlights. If you've seen Alexco trucks around the courthouse and on Grand Avenue over the last couple of weeks, they did a fiber project for us to connect from our downtown fiber ring over to the Wausau Police and Fire Station, across the street to Riverview, and then up to the Community Partners campus. And they're doing the fiber bonding yesterday. They started. We, as part of our 2024 budget, we had approved from our board to go to a higher level of Microsoft licensing, but as part of that, we were also taking certain groups of people to lower Microsoft licensing to try to minimize our costs. So we're just kicking that project off right now. We had a RFP out for a new core firewall, and we signed the agreement with the vendor for a new core firewall yesterday. So they'll be doing that conversion over the next 2 or 3 months. In this building, the county had approved a number of video upgrades to all of our courtrooms. 5 of the 6 are done. They have one they're doing in about 3 weeks. They did one earlier this week. I think 4 is got done this week. That's going really well as far as I've been told. The Lakeview Conference Suite, all the technology is in place down there. We had a couple of things that we had to, after we used it for a few meetings, we had a few changes we made, and those are done. And then we signed an agreement with Marco to renew, after an RFP process, renew for multifunction device contracts. So we are doing another 5-year lease of multifunction devices with Marco. And we just finished, Michael and I had spent an inordinately large amount of time on negotiating with their lawyers, but that's been accomplished. And then the last thing I'd mention is we've had a lot of cyber attacks lately. We've had a couple of compromised email accounts. The newest thing is people have figured out how to compromise multifunction device security. And so, what's that? What did I say? Oh, sorry. Multi-factor authentication. Yeah, sorry, those two are too close together. Thank you, Lance. We've had a whole bunch of those. We just had one yesterday that we had to change passwords on an account. That's a relatively new phenomena, is people grabbing the security keys behind multi-factor authentication tokens and using them to be able to log into what they're doing is if they're successful at it, it's just a really complicated thing, but they're logging into Office 365 with an account. Let's say they compromised mine. They would grab my token hash in the background, figure out how to reuse it, be able to log in with Office 365, go into our address book, send an email out to all county and city employees with a link saying, hey, this is Jerry from IT, and the document you're looking for is available at this link below, and then it's trying to get people to log in with their username and password on these fraudulent websites. They're getting more and more clever. We've had a lot of those in the last few weeks.
Okay. Is there, with the MFA then, is there going to be potentially an additional,
Yeah, with the new Microsoft licensing we're going to, it'll have 2 enhancements to it that should reduce that. There'll be conditional login, which means it'll do geographic conditional. So if it sees me logging in from an IP address that's registered in central Wisconsin, and then within 20 minutes there's one in Pennsylvania. It'll block the Pennsylvania one. It'll also notify us that that's happening. That will be a significant improvement, and so that'll hopefully take effect about the beginning of January when we change over that licensing.
All right, very good.
I think the other thing is, as Jerry said, these things are happening more and more, and the list of local governments that are being compromised continues to grow. We're looking at, as part of our, and we already do this through our onboarding process and our ongoing staff training, just continuing to be vigilant. I mean, when your meeting was going, I picked up my laptop and I turned to Jerry and I said, "Hey, this email, I'm going to forward it to your IT team because it's probably fraudulent," and just to make sure that they continue to log those so we see what the new trends are, I think is really important. So that staff education, really continuing that. It's painful. Earlier this week, didn't we? We had a training in this building.
We did a training in this room. Tuesday morning, we did. My cyber team did a training here, 45 minutes, kind of going over how to identify fraudulent emails, and I think we had 140 people on WebEx and another 10 or 15 in the room here, so that was a good hit. And we recorded it, and then we posted it on the learning management module for North Central Healthcare. We did a separate specific training just for North Central's accounting and finance staff. They had one of the attacks had been on them specifically about a little while back.
Very good. Questions or comments? No? Well, thank you, Jerry. Moving on then, item 8, next meeting date, time, announcements, future agenda items. As always, you're asked to bring ideas for future discussion. That can be here or by email. Supervisor Slorbert.
I have a future idea. I guess I'd like to know where Marathon County is when it stands to wind power and it stands to solar power. I know there's a lot of activity in my part of the county, where they're sending out letters guaranteeing so much money to the county, so much money to the townships. An example, Alliant is trying to build 30 windmills in the town of Day. And the woman that contacted me said she was in contact with the county. I don't know if she's been in contact or not, but she has offered the town of Day $235,000 a year off these windmills if they can build 25. If they build 30 to 40, they'll increase that wage. I know Alliant is planning solar projects. And what does the county, are they aware of this? Have they been contacted? How does the town or the county protect itself if they offered the county, according to the $285,000 a year, the town $235,000. So that's $500,000.
I think let's just note that, and then we'll see where we can go with that in the future. Supervisor Straub?
Would radon mitigation be part of this committee, or does that go to someone else? Discussion on radon mitigation.
That's actually an activity that the health department does. I mean, we facilitate testing, so I can alert the Health and Human Services Committee that perhaps an educational presentation on that and make that available to the full board as part of the recording process.
All right. Our next meeting, Thursday, December 7th, 2023 at 9 a.m. Moving on to item 9. Supervisor Robinson, motion to adjourn. Supervisor Slorbert, second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
We know that was a yes, Jasper. All right. Motion carries. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.